World's greatest sports game? Oh yeah, you know we're going to do this box opening right here, right now. Come on back after the break. Hey everybody, welcome out to the show Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to the tabletop gaming hobby, and this is a YouTube video looking at the game of Blood Bowl's newest standalone expansion, Dungeon Bowl. Now, if you're not familiar with Blood Bowl, well, it's one of the world's greatest sports games because this is a game that's over 30 years old, and if you've ever watched any of my content, especially my top 50 games of all time, this game always rings true in the top 10 games of all time because this is an absolutely fantastic game. And this is actually the brand new, most recent standalone box content, which kind of expands the basic game of Blood Bowl itself. And I thought it'd be a heck of a lot of fun to go ahead and do a box opening to show you everything that comes as brand new base box. Again, this is a standalone expansion. So if you've never played Blood Bowl before, you can actually hop in right with this box, although I'd highly recommend you go ahead and pick up the 2020 edition because it has the most recent rules for the game. All the basic teams and the more, well, let's just call it standard Blood Bowl football rules, because this basically takes the game of Blood Bowl, which is fantasy football, with fantasy races that have a slight little bit of violent tendencies, and throws them into a dungeon with a lot more rules. Now, this is actually basically the remake of a game that came out probably late 80s, early 90s. I think that's when the original Dungeon Bowl came out. And we've been waiting for this to come out for 30 years now, and I am super duper excited to actually tear into this box. I want to say though, before we get started, this is a $160 standalone box, and I do have a couple concerns or a couple complaints for what you're getting in the box already. If you look at this game, you're going to notice that they are recycling the miniatures from the prior edition. So if you have any of the other teams, or if you happen to be a maniac like me who has team box after team box after team box after, yeah, no, I own every single dang team for this game. Matter of fact, I own multiple copies of the teams because I've been playing this game since the late 80s, early 90s. I have the first edition of Blood Bowl, and I still keep it as a personal treasure because it's awesome that I enjoy so much. But I do kind of have a little bit of heartburn with the fact that we're paying $160 for some recycled miniatures. I know plastic gets a little bit expensive, but it's a little bit disappointing seeing all these miniatures get completely recycled. Now, if you want to know what I mean, I can show you the back of the box right here and just compare this to some of the teams. For example, you can go ahead and look at the Ogre team right here. You can see the Ogre, and there's this miniature, exact same miniature, no difference at all. It's the exact same miniature. Nothing's changed. They didn't change the pose. They didn't make it more dynamic. They didn't change the darn thing about it. It's the exact same thing. Matter of fact, same thing for the dwarf right here. You can see this is the exact same dwarven miniature. So just understand that this is what you're getting when you get the new box. Please don't look into Dungeon Bowl as adding brand new content when it comes to teams. If you're buying this to try to expand your teams, don't. If you're trying to expand your teams, please just go out there and buy the standard Blood Bowl teams because you're going to be disappointed because you're basically just getting a couple new positionals is a good way to look at it. Because the wonderful thing about Blood Bowl is you build up your team. And you have to follow certain rules when you're building up your teams, but just understand that when you're building up your teams, this is going to give you some additional positionals, but it's not going to give you anything you can't get from just going out there spending $50 or $60 for one of the brand new teams themselves. So let's go ahead and tear into this box, have lots of fun, and show you exactly what comes in the brand new box for Dungeon Bowl itself. So Dungeon Bowl, if you're not familiar with it, and you really should be familiar with Dungeon Bowl, because like I said, this is one of the oldest games out there. I mean, I cannot think of any other game that's over 30 years old, that's still popular, still getting new additions, still getting new expansion. That says a heck of a lot for the pedigree of the game itself. But it's basically taking the idea of a fantasy football game. If you're familiar with American football, you're basically familiar with the idea of what Blood Bowl is. It takes the idea of a fantasy football game with fantasy races that are technically supposed to be trying to score touchdowns, but some of these races think that violence is the true answer to the Blood Bowl throne, especially having to be a troll team, an ogre team, or an orc team, or maybe a Skaven team, or no, I think every team is pretty much out there looking for blood. It's pretty standard in the Blood Bowl rules of things. Although some of them, like the humans, can occasionally score touchdowns. And of course, touchdowns is really the way you're supposed to win this game. of Blood Bowl. So again, we're going to pop open this box, and I'm not going to spend too much time looking at the miniatures for a simple fact, like I said, they're 100% recycled. If you've seen some of the miniatures from the other standalone teams, you've seen these miniatures before, but what I would like to cover is some of the traps and the fact that these are going to be coming as colored plastic. The unfortunate thing about Blood Bowl, if you bought any of the other teams, you will know that most of it comes in a flat gray because they're pretty much expecting you to go ahead and paint your Blood Bowl teams. So it is kind of cool, and it's kind of neat to see that they are actually bringing out these colored plastics for all the players. So if you're not a painter, it's actually really cool to see that these are coming in colored plastics now. I really do hope that Games Workshop goes to this format and bringing all these teams out in colored plastics, because I think that is one of the things that's kind of holding this game back from being the true joy that it really can be. Blood Bowl really is more of a board game than it is a true miniature style game. It uses measured movement without using measuring tape. It actually uses your standard movement, moving across hex grid. You're rolling dice, you're building up teams, you're exploring your teams, you're building up these strategies and the tactics. This game has always been more of a Blood Bowl has always been more of a true board game than more of a miniatures game. You have Games Workshop really known for more of the miniatures games such as 40K, such as Age of Sigmar, and all these different games that they create, but there really are miniatures games. This is truly a board game, and I think if they would truly focus on this format of bringing colored plastic in for all their teams, it'd be one heck of an awesome boon. Matter of fact, if you actually look at Blitz Bowl, you'll see that the actual teams do come in colored plastics, and it would be great if they bring this out for Blood Bowl. Well, let's go ahead and look at these miniatures and look at the plastics we're getting. Again, we're just going to flip through these really quickly. These are 100% repeats of the plastics we've already seen. Just the sprues are a little bit different because now the teams are a little bit more random. Well, not random, but they're more chaotic. I guess that's a good way to put it. You'll understand what I mean when we start breaking more into this box. So this is going to be the College of Fire team right here. We're going to see our basic turn markers, coins, and all the different miniatures. This one has dwarves and a couple other different races on it. And then the other team has got more of the not so friendly guys. I'm sorry, I should say misunderstood dark elves and Skaven. They're misunderstood. They're not horrible evil persons. Majorly misunderstood. So this is going to be the Skaven. This is the Skaven gutter runner we've seen before. Coin, turn marker, and all these things, but again, you've seen all these miniatures before, but I'm not going to avoid the chance to say that even though we've seen these miniatures before, they're still really good, high quality miniatures. We get our measuring stick right here we're going to use for measuring. We get our scatter diagram, and we get our offside scatter diagram right there. And the thing that's going to be new and unique to Dungeon Bowl that's not the standard game of Blood Bowl is going to be this sprue right here. Now the sprue is going to be things that we're going to add onto the board to randomize the board a little bit. We're going to have pools, we're going to have traps, we're going to have all these things, treasure chests, kind of adding more to the fun of Blood Bowl. Yes, we're still playing a game of football, but we're playing football in a dungeon. Dungeons have treasure chests, dungeons have traps, and dungeons have lots of more excitement. Sure, we're trying to find the end goal, but we're also trying to beat up our opponents because it's Blood Bowl. But you see that we have the sprue right here, which has the treasure chest. We have these pools right here. And I don't believe, actually I'm pretty sure this is Games Workshop. We're probably going to have to do a little bit of gluing. Although I'm not really seeing if we're going to have to do any glue on these. Yes, we are going to glue them. So we are going to glue the sides of the treasure chest, and then we are going to have the lids for them. So there's going to be a little bit of gluing involved. Not a big deal at all. So let's go ahead and look at what is exactly in the box that's going to be new. Of course, the sprues weren't new, but the rest of the box should be 100% new. So the first thing we are going to see is we are going to see the official rules for Dungeon Bowl, which is going to tell us how to play the game. Now, the standard game of Blood Bowl does have its standard rules, and this is going to show some modifications to the rules. The biggest thing that people are going to notice between Dungeon Bowl and Blood Bowl, besides the board itself, which isn't going to be the standard asterisk in it. Like we said, we're going to be building a dungeon. That's what we're going to be tearing through. But the other big thing is that the teams are going to be much more chaotic and much more variety and much, much different. Your standard game of Blood Bowl, your basic teams are pretty much very race-centric. You have your Dwarven team, your Elven team, you have your Skaven team, and while they can usually get star players in a couple different positionals and usually the big guys that join their team, pretty much most of the teams are going to be pretty much concentrated on exactly what they are. Now, there's a couple teams that they're kind of their stick is to be a little bit more chaotic. Well, it's because it's a chaos team. But generally speaking, most of the teams are pretty much going to stick within their own type. So Skaven teams are going to be Skaven, Dwarven teams are going to be Dwarves for the most part. Goblin teams are going to be Goblin. One of the big cool things about this is the teams are going to be quite different. It's going to be very common to have a team that may have Dwarves and humans and maybe Halflings on it. And you may have another, I'm sorry, not Dwarves, Ogres and Dwarves and humans on it. Or you may have another team that's going to have Skaven on it and you're going to have Dark Elves on it, various different things like that. So I thought what we would do is we flip through this and we would look at the rulebook itself and go through all those teams. But I also want to go through the rulebook so we see all the cool things that are changing. Of course, we do have our cheat sheets. And if you watch my original review for the 2020 edition of the rulebook, you saw I had a couple complaints about the cheat sheet because I thought the cheat sheet could have been a heck of a lot better by having some things that, well, they're basically missing from the cheat sheet that should have been there. My cheat sheet, if you actually look at it, I vandalized the heck out of my cheat sheet. I actually put in some stickies all over to kind of put all the things that I thought were much more important. So it doesn't look like the cheat sheet has really changed that much. Although we look like we have some extra rules, so maybe I'm going to have to go through this and see what really has changed. Maybe I'll throw up another video showing some different comparisons between 2020 and the Dungeon Bowl sheets themselves. But we see that we've got rules for teleporting, we got rules for the opening of chests, of course the standard turnover and all that good stuff. Throw teammate actions, player activations, your pass actions, block actions, what the dice mean. So these were all in the basic original cheat sheets also. What I am not seeing on these cheat sheets is the stats for the individual team that cheat sheet was going to. Now in 2020 you had your Orc cheat sheet and then you had your Imperials cheat sheet, which kind of had their stats. And if you're keeping count, yes, I've said cheat sheet now about 9 times. I'm hoping I don't use that term much more because it's starting to sound even funny kind of my ears even too. But you're going to see that we have a lot of other stuff. So I think maybe they did some modifications. Maybe my voice was heard shouting in the dark saying, hey, these little tips, they weren't quite good enough for the original. So it's kind of cool to see that they did add some extra things. So we have the assembly here. Now, Blood Bowl is very, very nice. It's not your typical Games Workshop miniatures where the miniatures are going to come from anywhere from 9 to 15 pieces from one miniature. Most of these miniatures are going to be about 5 pieces, which is going to make them fairly quick and easy to assemble, which is very, very nice. Again, like I said, Blood Bowl has always been a very good hybrid game. One of the very rare things for Games Workshop. It's a true board game, more style game for Games Workshop. And we know Games Workshop doesn't put out a lot of these, and when they do, they're usually limited editions, such as a Silver Tower Warhammer games and stuff like that. So they do put them out there, and some of them are extremely good, but once they're gone, oh yeah, they're gone. Blood Bowl has had the wonderful ability to last over 30 plus years now. So let's go ahead and flip through the book here really quick and see what kind of cool stuff we are going to see different for the basic game. To make this nice and quick, I'll probably focus on things that are different. Yeah, I also have an opening video where I actually go through the book for Blood Bowl 2020. If you want to do some comparisons, go and check out the other video. I think I cover the book really darn well in that book too. But this is going to go over the basic things, the square rooms, the layout, the templates, most of the stuff you should already know how to do if you ever played Blood Bowl before. Standard turnover rules. Again, if you played Blood Bowl, that should not be a surprise. One of the big things that may be a little different are going to be the throw-in templates, because it's going to be different depending on how your dungeon layouts are going to be laid out. So that's probably going to be a different rule that we're going to have to learn how to get the hang of. Probably won't be that big of a deal to learn all that stuff. Looks like our standard teams are going to be there. We're going to have the team draft for the budgets. We have the treasury, team value, your standard setup. Now the big thing that's going to change is this is going to have an amorphic map, which means we're going to be changing the map every time we play the game. And one of the interesting things is while the players are going to cooperatively put the map together, after the players have put the map together, then we're going to randomize to figure out who gets which side. So it behooves you when you're building this map to make sure one side isn't better than the other. Unless you're hoping the dice are going to be on fire, you're going to win the roll-off and get to pick the side, because otherwise you may be giving your opponent one heck of an advantage. So we see some possible layouts right here, and you can get a really good idea of what I'm talking about here. So I'm imagining this one player would start here, one player would start there, and then they'd meet in the middle and do lots and lots of carnage, as any good Blood Bowl game should turn up doing. So the cool thing that's going to be really nice about Blood Bowl moving into Dungeon Bowl is every one of these rooms are going to have their own special rules. And when you move in these rooms, different things are going to happen. For example, you might move into the armory, and while you're in the armory, some of the players may have bonuses to their attack because they're basically grabbing weapons off the floor to go ahead and bash the other players, into the ground because they're trying to steal the football. we know scoring's secondary in this game. That's kind of the fun of the chaos of the game itself. So we have the chaotic idol, we have a crypt, we have the sewers, the treasure room. Ooh, treasure room. Let's see, treasure room. A player that begins their activation within the treasure room may perform the gather funds special action instead of doing anything else for that turn. That can be pretty darn fun, especially for teams who start off kind of behind and need to get funds very, very quickly. You could almost throw the first game during a campaign and just try to hopefully get a whole bunch of funds. That could be a possible tactic for you. Who knows? Chests, portals. Now, portals allow you to teleport across the board, as we see by this wonderful Skaven right here, is decide that, hey, I'm going to teleport and play a game of catch. So the team turn, activated players, jumping over prone. That's nothing new. That's been the rules before. Blitzing, picking up the ball, passing the ball. I'm sure there's going to be some nice new rules as we're seeing right here because of just how the layout of the board is going to be and range. We have passing interference. That's nothing new. We played with that before. Measuring range, the blocking, assisting the block. I love the artwork in Blood Bowl. It's always been cool. It's always been funny. I just love how it looks. It's kind of got this... Blood Bowl has always had this really cool, whimsical feel about it. It never took itself seriously. That's one of the things that's awesome about the game. It's not the world's most balanced game, but if you play with players who understand the game and understand the various different tiers, and if you play a Tier 1 team versus another Tier 1 team, or a Tier 2 team versus a Tier 2 team, or whatever you happen to do, the game is actually designed extremely well, and it's a fantastic game to play campaigns. So we have the kicking while they're down, and yes, the eventual goal is to make touchdowns, but they happen sometimes by accident. So we have the aftermath, the post-game sequence. This looks like it's just like the standard Blood Bowl. We're going to have spending star player points, retiring, preparing for your next fixture, skill use, skills we've seen before, sneaky, sprint, all these things. I'm sure there's going to be some special skills that may be specific to Dungeon Bowl, foul appearance, horns. None of these are looking anything new. Matter of fact, I think even this picture right here is from the 2020 rules, if I remember correctly. See, we have traits, bonehead, that's nothing new. I'm recognizing a lot of these regeneration. Plague ridden, trying to think, no, plague ridden's been there before. It's really stupid's been there before. Throw teammate, yep, we've seen that before. Inducements, Gold Wizard, Jade Wizard. Oh, that's kind of new. New Wizards. So one of the cool things about this now is when we're playing Dungeon Bowl, we're instead of playing for our teams, we're playing for one of the various different colleges. And these are going to be the colleges of wizardry. You have the Celestial Wizards, you have the Bright Wizards, you have the Amethyst Wizards, you have the Amber Wizards, you have the Gold Wizards, the Gray Wizards, the Jade Wizards, and the Light Wizards. And these are going to give them different abilities. Well, they're also going to judge what kind of team you're going to get. And we'll probably see those when we get really to the end of the book here very, very quickly. So the off-season, playoff season, prizes, redraft, exhibition play, which is probably how most people start getting their toe wet into the game. So now we have the team rosters right here. Now you're going to see what I was talking about earlier when I was mentioning all these teams. They're pretty darn different if you played Blood Bowl before. A much, much different layout of which races can be on a team. So the College of Fire team is going to be made up of dwarves. It's going to be made up of, let's see, we got dwarf blockers, linemen, bloodborne. We have dwarf runners, dwarf blitzers, troll slayers, ogre blocker, ogre grunt. So basically dwarves and orcs, and it looks like goblins will be part of the team. Sorry, nobblers, that should be specific. We have the College of Shadow, which is going to be your dark elves and your Skaven. So you have a dark elf lineman, Skaven lineman, goblin lineman. Okay, so we can even throw a couple goblins in the team if we want to. Dark elf throwers, gutter runners, dark elf blitzers, Skaven blitzers, Skaven thrower, and a witch elf and an assassin. That can make for a really darn devious team if you really think about it. A witch elf, an assassin, and a couple Skaven gutter runners. You might have some fun with that. So the College of Metal, not just because we're going to go all the way to 11. Goblin Bruiser lineman, orc lineman, human lineman. So now we have orcs and humans. That's something you would never see in Blood Bowl. Orc blitzers, human blitzers, orc throwers, black orcs, big and blocker, bodyguard, and a blood seeker. The College of Light is going to be Elven Union, Imperial Retainer, Elven Union Catcher, Human Catcher, Elven Union Blitzer, Elven Union Thrower, Imperial Thrower. So that's basically your elves and your human team. No, sorry, your Imperial. I should be specific here. The College of Death. This is going to be one team I'm going to play, spoiler alert, And the College of Shadow is going to be the other team I'm going to play because I love Skaven and I also love the Undead teams. They're my two favorite teams when it comes to playing Blood Bowl, my absolute two favorite teams. So, College of Death, we are going to have Skeleton Lineman, Zombie Lineman, Ghost Runner, White Blitzer, Flesh Golems, Mummy. So this actually is not too different from your standard Undead team. There's a couple little differences, but it looks like it combined both of the Undead teams there. College of Life is going to be Halflings, Snotlings, interesting, a Rodder Lineman. Oh, that's kind of interesting. So basically we have taken Nurgle plus Halflings plus Wood Elves. And of course we get a couple Nobblers. That is super, not Nobblers, Snotlings. That is actually super duper interesting. So you take a War Dancer plus a Halfling and maybe throw in a Troll. Yeah, you can have a Troll. So a Troll or a Treeman to throw your Nobblers and your Snotlings and your Halflings down while your Bloaters do basically your front lines. That could be really darn cool. College of Beasts, not going to lie, this is another team that I might actually look into because I do love werewolves and I do love my Chaos Beastmen. So Beastman, Runner, Werewolf, and we got Khorne, we got Chaos Chosen, a Minotaur. Ooh, that's always got my soul right there. I love Minotaurs. They're actually really, really fun. If I could dig through my box here really quick, I could show you my Minotaurs. Nah, not worth it. Not going to take the time to do that because this is all about Dungeon Bowl, not my teams I have. College of Heaven. So is this going to be humans versus and skinks? It is. Let's see here. We have humans. Yep, humans and skinks. Interesting. Chameleon skink, Saurus blocker plus a human. Move allowance 6, strength 6, agility 5+. Passing allowance 6+. They're never throwing the ball, but they have a darn good armor value. That actually could be a fun team to play too because you have some really good strength to do your front line. And humans are actually pretty decent runners. They got an agility of 3, move allowance of 8. Your noble blitzers aren't the best. I'd probably drop the blitzers, go for the Saurus blockers, get a few linemen in there, and maybe a skink. Wow, that could be a lot of fun. So, and then we're going to get to the end of the book where we get a couple different painted miniatures. And so those are all the teams that are going to be available in Dungeon Bowl. Let's look to see what else we have in the box here. It's basically going to be the bases for our miniatures. Nobody cares about that. Dice. Everybody loves dice. And actually, these purple dice look really darn cool. Let's go ahead and have a check of those dice because they're semi-translucent and they actually look really darn cool. So we have the standard dice, which we're used to from playing Blood Bowl. We have the positional dice for inflicting pain and misery on up to our 16 teammates. We have our block dice, our standard dice to roll, and our D8. But these are actually nice dice. They're full-size dice, which is always a wonderful thing. So that is pretty darn cool. And then the only thing left in the box here is going to be the dugouts. And then also we're going to have the tiles themselves. And I can already tell these are pretty darn thick tiles. I have to give Games Workshop credit. I grouse about how expensive the games can be because, you know, a lot of Games Workshop stuff can run close to $200. Then after I complain about that, I think to myself, that's a pretty standard Kickstarter price. And then I start thinking to myself that a lot of games that come out on Kickstarter are not that great. And basically it's just a way to get more plastic miniatures to fill up your Dungeons & Dragons board or your Dungeons & Dragons fodder for your RPGs. But Games Workshop is really good about bringing out good components, nice, super thick cardboard, which is always super duper nice, and good components, and of course their miniatures. Games Workshop has always been second to none when it comes to miniatures. For the price, you're not going to find better miniatures than what comes out with Games Workshop. So let's go ahead and look at the smaller camera right here, the zoomed in camera I should say, and let's look at these tiles. So, yes, thick cardboard, and you heard it snapping there, so you know this is good. So these are going to be double-sided. We're going to be building up stuff right here, and let's pull out a couple miniatures so you can see just exactly how they're going to look on the board. So let's bring out our ogre team because ogres are extra fun. As you can see, these boards are more than big enough to handle a big ogre team, so it actually works out pretty darn good. Or even a Minotaur, because, you know, you can never have too many Minotaurs. So let's look at the other pieces that we have here. We have double-sided dragons, very, very cool. Of course, we have our dugouts. Our other team's dugout. I like the touch with the portal because that's how you can get in and out of the dungeon. Then of course we have all these pieces that we are going to punch out right here. These are going to be the doors. So basically if we connect, I'll show you how this is going to work here really, really quick. If you're going to connect something, you may have it just like this. And then you'll signify the doorway or the archway just like that. I'm sure some enterprising people are going to quickly go ahead and 3D print some doorways or something really, really cool to make it look really extra darn cool. So, just so you can see all these really quick. Room, back side of the room. Another room, back side of the room. Not punching all the doors because, hey, these doors are going to look just like doors. Another room, back side of the room. Another T-junction. So now we have 2 T-junctions. They look pretty much pretty identical. Another room. Although, you know, it's really cool. You could double purpose these because these look like they will work fantastically for anybody who happens to have Hammer Hall or any of the board games from the series for Warhammer Quest. So if you actually have any of the Warhammer Quest games, even Silver Tower, because people have done a lot of homebrew for Silver Tower to make Silver Tower a lot of extra fun. But even more importantly, these actually work really good with Hammer Hall. So if you still have Hammer Hall, which I know is a super limited release run, but it was actually pretty good for what it was. Short campaign, but if you're willing to write some campaigns or some adventures for it, it was a heck of a lot of fun. So you could actually use these to go ahead and expand your Hammer Hall, because these tiles, I'm willing to bet they're the same scale just by looking at them and trying to go off memory. I'd be almost willing to bet these are pretty much the same scale as Hammer Hall. So that's basically a complete opening for Dungeon Bowl. Again, Blood Bowl is one of my favorite games of all time just because it's a great game. If you don't think Blood Bowl is a great game, you're wrong. Okay, I know I shouldn't say that, but it's a great, fantastic game, especially if you can get into the theme, get into the spirit, and get into the fun of the game itself. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I will get to them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me at off-the-shelf-board-game-reviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. I'll do my best to answer your email as quickly as I can. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy the content I put out there, think about supporting the channel over on Patreon. Just $1 in the tip jar can help me cover my costs. Remember, this channel is 100% sponsor-free. All the content you see, I purchased with my own money. I had to go out there yesterday, spend $160 to buy this game. Well, okay, I'm not trying to be, totally altruistic. I love Blood Bowl. I was going to buy this no matter what. But you can really help me cover my costs just by tossing $1 in the tip jar. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this video series, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching.